Hi, I'm Danielle with the Sweeney Agency, and I'm so thrilled to welcome author and leadership speaker Michelle Ray, who's the founder of Lead Yourself Institute. Michelle's keynotes and coaching help individuals and teams master personal leadership. Her presentations are filled with inspiring ideas and insights on change, resilience, and the power of authentic leadership in the workplace. Thank you so much for joining us today, Michelle.
It's such a pleasure, Danielle. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you.
So we'll kick things off right away because I think this is something we're all seeing and wondering about in ourselves. Can you give us your 3 top habits for highly resilient people?
Sure. Well, I've given this a lot of thought over the years, and I think it's always really helpful for people to be able to distill an idea into, really easy to understand principles. And, what I believe is that the 3 habits of resilient people, resilient leaders, are the habit of being able to rethink, respond, and rebound. So, if we start off, first of all, let's talk about what it means to rethink. As we're connecting right now, as we all know and the world knows, we're in the middle of a global pandemic. And it's understandable that some people are managing through this, some people are just hanging on and coping through it. So whenever we find ourselves in an adversarial situation where it's particularly challenging, sometimes it's easy to lose perspective. And I think there are a number of reasons for that. We're surrounded by a lot of negativity, a lot of, messages in the news. If we choose to, buy into those messages, then, we might find ourselves buying more and more into the fear. And I believe that what resilient leaders do is they look at a situation and they understand what's happening, and they understand that they can attach all kinds of connotations to a situation, but they're able to reframe the situation. One of the most powerful books that I read during the course of my career and still pick it up is Dr. Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And Dr. Viktor Frankl wrote that book when he was in the concentration camps in the Second World War. And he started what was known as the self-determinist movement. And essentially, he's been quoted many times as just incredible philosophy on life, a man of great wisdom. And essentially what he said was that one can choose one's attitude in any set of circumstances. So think about how that applies right now. Think about how that applies, in the current pandemic. And when you're facing any challenge, that I think is a really important difference, is the ability to reframe how we see things. So if I had an apple in my hand right now, we could attach all kinds of connotations to the apple. So if I were a teacher, I might say, what does that represent to you? And you'd probably say, well, students, or a gift, or something else. Maybe you'd see it as a bribe. Or you might think of the computer company, Apple. Or you might think of a worm and what that might represent to the worm. And basically that would probably be food or lunch. So you could then ask yourself, who's right? And then you might say, well, everybody's right, because your perspective is your truth. So it's very important for us to realize that what we decide something to be is actually creating a reality, and it's creating our own reality. So then we need to ask ourselves, is that reality serving us? So when you're able to look at a situation with a different lens, I think that that's a trait of resilient people. As I gave that example a moment ago, I've had many examples of resilient individuals in my life, including my parents, and I may touch upon them shortly when I talk about some of the other aspects of resilience. How are you framing what is happening to you right now? That is also a very important thing to consider when you go through any kind of change in business, any kind of change in your personal life. It's not only about this time, it applies whenever we're facing some kind of uncertainty. We are looking for certainty. That makes sense. So the one thing that we have 100% control over, Danielle, and I think this is really critical, is how we choose to see something and how we choose to respond to that particular situation. Which leads me to my next point. A second habit of resilient people is choosing to respond as opposed to react. Now, what does that mean?
What a great distinction. Yeah.
It really is, because reactivity is all about emotion. Reactivity is something that happens impulsively. It's really all about not giving something very much thought. But a person who responds thinks things through. If there's a way of trying to apply some logic to what's happening. So they're thinking about the situation and they're choosing to respond rather than react. They're actually giving the situation their full attention. And I would say that one of the big difference between responding and reacting is approaching the circumstances with conscious awareness. And again, that's one of the habits of resilient people. They want to separate themselves from the herd mentality. Have you ever seen, how many times do we all just catch that herd mentality? Everybody goes into reactive mode. This is awful. This is horrible. It can't get any worse. And someone will say, yeah, it's really bad. And the next person will say, oh, I don't know what we're going to do. But it's that ability to be able to take a step back and be the objective observer of your own experience. And that is a powerful habit of resilient people. So then they are better positioned to find a way to rise above. It's also important to realize that disruption is happening all the time. We're in a period of an intense disruption right now. So if you just think of the fact that disruption, if it almost sounds like I'm contradicting myself, but it is a continuum. We go through these peaks and valleys in business and in life. So before COVID-19 hit, we were rolling along the highway of life. And all of a sudden we were shocked into this new reality. Now, when we're going along this highway of life and we experience that disruption, all of a sudden we might find ourselves falling down this way. So in other words, the line becomes vertical as opposed to continuing on a linear path. Now, some people may stay there for a very long time in that state of shock. But there are others who slowly but surely start to come out of that situation and create a new reality for themselves. So they're in a higher state of consciousness and now they're operating at a different level. And I think that that's another piece that goes with the ability to respond. And obviously, what we ideally want to do in this current situation and when we face any unpredictable, unprecedented disruption is that we want to be able to rebound from the disruption. We want to be able to rebound and ideally be operating at a new level. And as leaders, or for leaders, it's really important to know that some people are going to get there slowly, some people are going to get there quickly, and it's true to say that it's going to be very hard for some people to reach that level. And that's true in any situation that we never expected.